I know this is only scheduled for an hour, and so Donna better speak very quickly, and I won't speak very much at all. My name is Jane Match-Neville. I'm Director of Communications and Marketing at Department of Education, and I also chair the Communications Advisory Committee as part of the Physical Activity Taskforce, and today's event is brought to you by the Physical Activity Taskforce. That's the advert. And one of the reasons why we thought it would be really interesting to hear what Donna has to say is this whole area of social marketing, and I'm actually about to do something around the social marketing campaign today at my own work. Physical activity, as you know, is enormously important, and research 10 years ago showed that we probably weren't making the gains that we wanted to. So the Physical Activity Taskforce was established and brings together a whole range of agencies working together for a strategy around physical activity in Western Australia. As I say, my personal involvement is that I chair that committee, and part of what we do as the Communications Advisory Committee is advise the Taskforce on communications and advocacy, and particularly in the area of social marketing as we're looking at today. So on to Donna Van Buren. As you were walking in, everyone was going, "Hello, Donna," so I probably don't need to read the screen that she told me that she had edited, so it was very short. But for those of you who don't know Donna, I originally actually met her many years ago when she was working with the state government, and of course she headed up a number of campaigns that are almost iconic campaigns now: Two Fruit and Five Veg, the Quit campaign, and the Freedom from Fear campaign, which was the men's domestic violence campaign. She then went into Donovan Research, which has subsequently become TNS, and she has worked here and over in Canberra, and we're glad to say that she's back here in Perth again. And as I was parking, she was parking next to me in a very large car, and in that time she's had 2 children, got a very large car, and they go camping. So I was making sure that she didn't bump into my very small car, government car, of course. But Donna has done an awful lot in these years, and particularly is looking at the social marketing and takes that responsibility in TNS. So I'd like to hand over to Donna, and I actually have seen some of this presentation on all of it, and it's really, really interesting. Thanks, Donna.
Thanks. Thanks, Jane. Through that introduction, hopefully it would be apparent to you that I don't stand up here before you claiming to be a social media or a digital expert. My expertise falls in the area originally in health promotion, and for the last 10 years in social marketing, and keeping up to date with what is best practice internationally and in Australia with regards to social marketing. And the challenges for us in the last few years of how do we apply what we know works really well in terms of social marketing development, and how we embrace social media, digital strategies, and take into account what's happening in that area and build that into social marketing strategy development. I started my career, or early in my career, in the WA Health Department, and I can still remember sitting at my desk one morning in the mid-90s, early to mid-90s, and someone from back in those days, social marketing was heavily relied on publications and the generation of high quality publications, and someone from our publications department coming up to me and saying, "Donna, we have to update all of the publications for the Fruit and Veg campaign straight away. You have to check everything word for word, and you have to drop everything now." And I remember thinking, like, why? Why is this so urgent? Because all of our publications are about to go onto the World Wide Web. And I remember saying in my naivety, what is the World Wide Web and why is this so urgent? And it was explained to me as, well, it's going to go up onto the internet, and everybody over the world will be able to read your publications. And I remember thinking, oh, like, this is not important. Why do we have to drop everything and do this? How can this be so urgent? And really, is this World Wide Web going to even be here next year? And in 20 years, how things have changed. So just moving through, what I wanted to do is, whenever I start a talk on social marketing, I think it's really important to understand, or to make sure that we have a common understanding about that language and the language that we use when we talk about social marketing. Because social marketing does mean different things to different people, and it's used in different contexts and not always in the same way. For me, we really embrace social marketing in a very holistic, ecological definition, if you like, where we define social marketing around the 4 tools that social marketers have at their disposal to bring about behaviour change for social good or common good. So we have at our social marketers the tools at our disposal around education and persuasion, around control strategies such as legislation strategies, pricing and taxation strategies, strategies that set standards, or strategies that are formed in legislation and have a strong enforcement to them. And perhaps more recently, and the part of social marketing, the tool of social marketing that has not been embraced in a comprehensive approach for many years is the design strategy, around understanding the role that settings, context, environment, external environment plays in actually contributing, facilitating or prohibiting behaviour change. And those 4 things, a mix of those 4 approaches are what form part of a social marketing strategy. And it's about getting the balance right and understanding for a particular target audience and a particular behaviour, where should the emphasis be placed towards the journey towards behaviour change for any particular audience. We always talk about this in terms of systems thinking. So for any behaviour, whether you're working in the physical activity area, in the obesity, chronic disease, diet and lifestyle area, in transport, in greening behaviours, in carbon footprint and carbon control behaviours, we have to think about how people, our target audiences, operate within a system. If you pull that system apart, perhaps traditionally we've approached the green parts of the system, the education and persuasion strategies are usually our MarComs strategy and become the campaign. But the campaign, the advertising part of the campaign is not the only part of the social marketing response. And importantly, if we look at the blue side of the systems map, the control strategies and design strategies, they form typically, traditionally, the policy response, the provision of services response. But it's really important that those 2 sides of the equation talk together and are coordinated. Just like when we do traditional social marketing, for social media and digital strategies, motivations, attitudes and beliefs are really important in terms of getting the message right and getting the message execution right. We always refer back to a very classic model of behaviour change because it works well, it's simple, it makes sense, and it has stood the test of time over the last 25 to 30 years of social marketing and behavioural theory approaches. But this model really just points us to the importance of motivations, attitudes and beliefs and understanding target audiences, and that's really important for digital. And we've come back to this when we're thinking about digital approaches, understanding what motivates people to be online and are people different in terms of their motivations to be online or not. Just move through this quickly. So before you embark on a digital strategy, or not, and it may well be at the end of the day or not, it's really important to understand how Australians are using the internet and social media, and are they the same or are they different, how are they the same and how are they different, and use this to embark upon decisions. So almost everything else that I'm going to share with you this morning is based around 2 critical, iconic studies that TNS did in 2010, where we explored the digital and online behaviours, attitudes and most importantly motivations across 46 markets across the world to understand why people are online and what they're doing online. So we have not only very good data about what Australians are doing, but we have that in comparison to what is the rest of the world doing. This data is actually what I would call old now because it's 12 months old. We actually had this study in field right now. So we're doing Digital Life Australia and the World 2011. That data will be available to us later this year. So we're finding because of the digital marketing and digital behaviours, we're actually having to update and refresh our data every 12 months. And this year it goes into 62 markets across the world. So first of all, what I'll share with you is a little bit of Australia in context. How do we define Australians in terms of their online behaviour? It's just some classic, formulas or general understandings about Australian online use that you can take into any kind of conceptual planning for online strategies. The first thing is that Australian is a very mature internet market, and I say mature, I don't mean sophisticated and I don't necessarily mean advanced, but it is mature. Our internet penetration is one of the highest in the world at 80%, and subsequently our online audience, because of our Australian demography, is comparatively old compared to other markets around the world. On average, Australians spend 18 hours a week online, 12th highest market in the world. And we have a very well developed PC usage across Australia, but we are not so developed in terms of our mobile usage. But obviously that is growing at exponential rates. We have a strong use of email and social media, but we are not so, we're below average in terms of using news online and multimedia online. The other interesting thing that came out of the study is that Australians interact with government online far less than that which they would like to. So Australians would like to be interacting with government online more than what they are right now. And that is across a range of interactions, from knowledge seeking, finding information, to paying bills online and sourcing fact-based information online. But there is certainly opportunity to increase Australians' interaction with government online because they're motivated to do more than what they're doing now. Okay, what I want to share with you through the rest of the presentation is, I guess, 7 learnings that we, in terms of digital with government, that we have kind of picked up both through the DNA study, but also through just working with government agencies, NGOs, federal departments as well as state departments, and the obstacles that they're coming across, the hurdles that they're contemplating as they move through trying to integrate digital into their more traditional campaign and media strategies. So I'm going to take you through these 7 key learnings or insights, as you like, as we move through. Hopefully there'll be something in each of these for each of you to take away, at least to have a conversation about, if not actually do something different. So the first one is what we call understand your audience. This is the actual insight that drove the whole reason for doing this massive digital online study. Fundamentally, we do need to change the way we view Australians to be able to maximise our understanding of digital behaviour. The Australian online population is not homogeneous. And when you begin online development with an understanding of how and where Australians are online and why they're online, that's going to help you leapfrog into developing communications that are well targeted and that are going to be more effective in terms of progressing an audience towards behaviour change. So we've discovered that there actually are 6 different digital typologies, or segments if you like, in Australia, ranging from what we call functionals down at the left-hand, or your left-hand side, to influencers on the far right. These typologies have been created by looking at their online behaviour, attitudes and, most importantly, motivations. This gives you a really good framework for thinking about when you approach campaign development and the integration of digital and online. Who are we talking to? Which of these segments? How many of these segments are we talking to? And do we need to develop different communication strategies for different segments? So the first of these segments is the functionals. The largest group in Australia, 1/4 of Australians, are what we call functionals. To them, the internet is purely a functional tool. They don't want to express themselves online and they're not interested in socialising online. And more importantly, they're not really that interested in changing or increasing their online behaviour. The second group are what we call aspirationals, representing in Australia only 6% of the market. So I would almost say this group we would kind of push towards functional users. They're similar to functionals in that they're a basic user of the internet, but they do aspire to improving their capabilities. But they can see the benefits of being more active online, but they haven't embraced that yet. The third group are networkers, representing 20% of the Australian market. For networkers, the internet enhances their relationships, it enables them to connect with both people. Facebook is their best friend, they're highly social online. You can see we're moving towards a progression here of sophistication in use. The fourth group are knowledge seekers, representing 19% of the market. They love the internet as it allows them to learn so much. They love researching new things online, and the information they find helps them to feel empowered, and it's the sense of empowerment that the internet gives them that defines them from the earlier groups. The fifth group is communicators, representing 10% of the Australian market. They just love talking and expressing themselves online. They're highly social, both with people and with brands and products. They're big smartphone users, and they say they couldn't live without the internet. I'm thinking now you've probably all sat there and thought, where do I sit in this group of segments? And I wonder how many of you sit in our last segment, the most advanced of the segments, influencers, 19% of the market. They love to voice their opinion and they want to be seen as a leader. They blog, they tweet, they socialise, and they try to get their opinion across any which way they can, even if it's via their phone. So they're big smartphone users. They spend most of their time connected. But this group represents just under 20% of our Australian population, and we really need to bear that in mind when we're putting a lot of effort and time into developing online engagement strategies.
Have you broken it down?
We have, yep, we have, yeah, not for Western Australia, but we have for Australia, yes, and I've got some more stuff on that. Australia is a mature, diverse market. So when we compare Australia to the rest of the world, Australia, as I said before, because of mostly of our demography, our aged, older population, but our wide penetration of internet use, we skew towards the lower end of the scale. So we've got more functionals, more networkers and more knowledge seekers than other countries and other markets. What this means is that these segments are quite distinct. They've got different patterns of behaviour. So if you're targeting a mass market strategy, you really need to have diversity in your communication methods and in your strategy, because one size is not going to fit all Australians when it comes to digital and online strategies. Okay, moving on from there to the next insight, which we just call don't reinvent the wheel. Do we have to come up with something new in Australia every time, or how different are Australians to other markets? Which markets are we similar to in terms of motivation and use? First of all, when we look at the time people spend on a range of digital activities, such as social networking, blogging, accessing services, seeking knowledge and information, both across PCs and across mobiles, we looked for similar patterns of behaviour. Oh, hang on, first of all, you asked me about demography. Yeah, there's a couple of breakdowns here. I'd forgotten that I put this slide in. What we find is that based on gender, that there's a fairly even spread, slightly more females in the functional users. When we break by age, we find that, not surprisingly, the more advanced users, so particularly the influencers, are skewed towards a younger audience. Functionals are skewed towards an older audience, and also fairly even distribution of the segments across metro and regional, except for when it comes to that influencer tweeting blogging group, who there are fewer of those in the regional areas compared to metro, and that's probably a function of speed access and penetration in regional areas and high-speed broadband and things like that. So there's nothing in here that's surprising, which is why I thought I'd taken it out, but very much intuitive, and that it's demography and penetration that's driving the groups here. So in terms of how different, I'll just go through that because I've already talked about that one. How different are Australians to the rest of the world? The first observation that we made is that North Americans and Western Europeans at the macro level behave in a similar way to Australians when it comes to online behaviour. China and other Asian markets, for example, are very different. So we would not necessarily look to the Asian markets for what they're doing. We would look to North America and to Western European countries in terms of similarity of behaviour and similarity of those segments. Secondly, when we look at what motivates people, Australians, to be online, once again, what motivates Australians to go online, to social network, to tweet, to blog, is similar to what motivates North Americans and Western Europeans. So I guess this is what tells us, if we're looking to look at examples around the world, campaign examples, social marketing, program examples, the way that big campaigns in other similar countries are actually engaging the internet and developing Facebook pages, developing online communities, it would be the UK, the Western European countries and Northern America that we would look to for similar examples. Now, I'm not advocating that we just pick something up from another country and plonk it into Western Australia. We would of course be testing for transfer of cultural sensitivity, transfer of message, and does this work. But if you're looking to source something from successful campaigns in other markets, you would look to these markets rather than other markets around the world. So it's more of a bit of a fast track of what's being done elsewhere and what is more likely to transfer into the Australian context. And it's from these countries that I've spoken about. The third insight, I guess, is what we call talk to the heart. This is all about how do we get to talk to our customers, our target audiences, and what is going to fast track our connection with them online. Where are the keyholes to actually engaging people online? Because one of the biggest challenges facing us today is knowing exactly how to connect and engage with people online. It's not just about the overarching activity that, you know, does the audience, how many sites do they use, how often are you getting click-throughs, that sort of thing. They're the things that are fairly easy to track and get numbers around and understand. What is more difficult to understand is in your online communication, what is the right style, what is the right tone, and what is the right energy of the communication, and how do you match that to the motivations of the group that you're engaging with. What we need to do is understand at a much deeper level what motivates people to do what they do, what motivates them to Facebook, what motivates them to tweet, to access services online. And if you can understand those motivations, it can really help you to understand not what you should do to reach a target, but how you should communicate with them and how you can create engagement. The internet is everywhere, but it is not everywhere in the same way, and it is not everywhere in the same way for the same people. So what's not been shown in the data I've showed you so far is how the different motivations for using the internet can vary by market. Now, we haven't done analysis on a behaviour by behaviour level or a West Australian target audience by target audience market, but there are two things that it's worth bearing in mind in terms of at the either end of the scale, how do functionals differ from influencers, for example. For a start, Australians are looking for two core needs. When we did this survey across all of the world markets, there were 6 main motivational or emotional need states that people were seeking to fulfil by being online. Management, so information seeking, knowledge seeking, entertainment or enjoyment, connection, reassurance, empowerment and stimulation. So these are the 6 core reasons or motivations why people are interacting online. In Australia, those, we can narrow that further to Australians are mostly motivated by either management kinds of reasons or entertainment, enjoyment and stimulation kinds of reasons. When we ask people specifically about interacting with government online, 74% of Australians cite convenience as being the key driver at present. You have to step back though and start to think, well, is that because the content is driving the reason for being on there? So at the moment, Australian content is more about functional reasons than entertainment reasons, or is, you know, which one comes first? But what was surprising is in Australia, entertainment, and I would put stimulation in there as well, is the second most important need state. So we want to bear this in mind when we're developing strategies. And also, interestingly enough, those segments are there for different reasons. So when we looked at functionals are online mostly because they are looking for information, they are looking for stimulation, they want to be inspired into a decision. Or if we think about that in a social marketing context in terms of the continuum towards behaviour change or pre-contemplation, contemplation, ready for action, they're looking for stimulation and information. Whereas influencers are there more to reach a decision by consensus. So what other people are saying and doing matters to them and is part of their frame of reference when they're making decisions subconsciously or consciously about your particular message. The fourth lesson, if you like, is what we say, don't forget about your website. I've seen a lot of trending over the last 12 months, and this is a comment more on what federal government departments are doing, state governments in other states and territories, not just on, you know, what's happening in Western Australia. But there is a trending towards developing more fractured digital strategies that are inclusive of Facebook pages, Twitter, and that are actually starting to move away or take the eye off the ball when it comes to an agency's own website. And I would caution you about that, because what this data is telling us and what the evaluations that we do of government websites and government campaigns is telling us is that agency-owned websites have a really important role to play in terms of interacting with your target audience, in terms of the trustworthiness and credibility that goes hand in hand with actually being the government agency and being the authoritative voice on the particular topic and issue. So when we looked at this was done across Australia, not just for government interactions and not just for social marketing behaviours, but all marketing behaviour. But it was really clear that people put more trust and more energy into looking at the organisation's own site and then any referred sites off that, and in face-to-face interaction over and above other ways of getting information about the particular behaviour or the particular product. So your website is a crucial source of information and influence. Make sure it gets the attention that it deserves. It's often the last thing that gets updated or launched when a new campaign is launched, you know, by the minister. And Australia does still have a strong reliance on personal contact. So if there is an opportunity through agencies, through you know, shop fronts and that sort of thing, that is really important. Australians are still relying on those two sources of interaction heavily. That they haven't switched completely to, you know, just relying on Facebook and social media. So I really believe that the key implication for this chart is to remember to focus on all the touch points that citizens or members of the general public interact with along their journey of behavioural contemplation or, you know, seeking information and behaviour change. So whilst your own website, being a government website, might not be as sexy as your Facebook page can be, that may not be the most effective way to actually engage with your target audience, because government-owned websites are still really, really important as information sources. But you do need to focus on improving the experience. This is national data, it's not Western Australian data, but quite telling in terms of the effort that we could be making into improve government websites. Okay, I want to move now to talking a little bit about online communities and how we can actually pull people into online communities and what are effective ways to doing that. So how do we check who we're engaging with? From the work that we did, we found that Australia is a voyeuristic market. We like to use and read user-generated content, but we don't actually create much ourselves. We are, relatively speaking, low creators of USG. To demonstrate this in a bit more detail, we just use this really simple framework of what we classify people as generators of user content, amplifiers and readers. And if we compare Australians to the rest of the world, what you'll see is that compared to the global average, Australia is underrepresented in terms of generating content, but as a flow-on effect, also amplifying that content and reading it. Now, there are some categories that Australians are better generators of content than others, and health is one in particular in Australia, and also topics where people have a strong bond. So new mother groups are also generating a lot more content around that area of parenting and new mothering than lots of other topics. But generally, Australians, you would look to, you know, at the Asian markets and China in particular, who are massive generators of their own content on social media platforms. And when we drill down to the segment level in Australia, there's really only one segment, influencers. 19% of the Australian market, of the online population, who are turning tradition on their head. I mean, really we're seeing now that the wisdom online, wisdom on the internet is coming from 19% of online users, and it's young people, not our older, wise and worldly Australians. So the implications of this, if you just sit and think about that for a minute, are quite vast. Firstly, targeting this one group, this 19% of influencers successfully, even if they demographically or attitudinally are not your primary target audience, will create more positive content about your organisation, your campaign, your topic, your behaviour, in terms of online chat and in the internet content. So you need to make a conscious decision about whether to go there with this group of influencers, Facebook pages, user-generated content, and how much do you want that to influence that content, and how are you going to pull in that group and have some level of influence over what they're saying about you. Secondly, when you're doing your social media monitoring, it's really important to remember that you're only monitoring this 19% of people online. The majority are silent, and therefore they're not represented. So monitoring online content in terms of you know, positive, neutral and negative disposition is really only a reflection of that 19% of people. Good to tell ministers that. Finally, while some segments don't read a lot of this USG, those functional groups and the groups that were at the less advanced end of the scale, USG does have the ability to jump for content to jump into other forms of media. And so that is worth bearing in mind, that a negative or a really positive comment in online chat stuff can jump onto mainstream radio, you know, breakfast DJ commentary. It can jump into the West very quickly. It does have the ability. So once again, it's important not to ignore what the user-generated content is saying, but to have a deliberate strategy about, do we want to force it from online into offline? Can we use that as a strategy and interact with mainstream media in that way? Do we want to protect it? Do we actually want to have a protocol in place of what we're going to do if online content jumps media? And be really conscious of that and go into the strategy. I guess scenario planning. What is our response as an organisation should these kinds of scenarios play out? Two to go. Show me the money. This is all about creating communities and what to bear in mind if you're contemplating creating online communities. Things to keep in mind. I guess I'm just sharing some of the lessons learned from some of the agencies we've worked with that have had huge PR disasters from going into creating communities, and it's come back to bite them. There are also examples in government of this being done really, really well through Facebook. So it's just about really understanding the risks and having a game plan for how you can mitigate risk going into your development of your programs and strategies. Most creative agency, advertising agency execs that you talk to now will say every brief they see has got a part of their brief that's got a community aspect to them. So it seems like every government agency, NGO, every company, every brand wants to be friends with their audience. And it's this need to be out there and be friends that seems to be driving the strategy, not the actual deliberative decision-making and deliberative conscious assessment and analysis of risk that is informing that. So how successful are we being? We also explored what would motivate someone to connect with an organisation. And I'm sorry, but it's generally not because they just want to give you feedback about your campaign or your brand all the time. Ultimately, if they like you, and probably if they love you, they'll be open to connecting with you. So bear that in mind. If not, the good news in Australia is that they can be bought. 70% of Australians will connect with an organisation or join a community if they get deals, promotions and so on through it. Australia is far more likely to be persuaded to engage through incentives than other markets. And what's really interesting is that when we look at the different segments, the more basic users, and for us in Australia, that's the largest group of online users, functionals, definitely require incentivisation. But the more advanced segments, the influencers, are just as likely to connect with you because they've got a strong opinion about you as they are for incentives. So if you're wanting to bring functionals to a community, online community, you do need to incentivise them. And that doesn't necessarily mean a financial incentive, but there needs to be something that they get out of it. And it just comes back to classic behaviour change theory, cost-benefit analysis. There's not something in it for me, I'm not going to act. And that, we're talking about that at a very micro level now when it comes to online behaviour. So the implication, of course, is if you want to create a community around your organisation, make sure that you've budgeted to incentivise people to join. With online communities, think about why would someone want to be part of it? What do they get out of it? And it's really important for you to debate that at policy level or at program level. It might not be, as I said, a financial incentive, and what we often refer to this is stickiness. Finding the sticky factor for your particular behaviour and your particular audience. People will only come to online communities if they connect and form a bond around your topic or your behaviour. So it's finding what is the sticky factor for your particular audience and using that as the pull or the incentive to get people towards, into your community. The stickiest online communities in Australia are the Huggies community. New mums and parents coming online to chat and share problems, stresses, frustrations, seek solutions, find new ideas and ask for help. No one is there because they're particularly enamoured with the brand Huggies. I would question how many people on the Huggies website buy Huggies or repeatedly buy Huggies, particularly if it's not on special. But what they have in common is this shared emotional connection over their struggles and what they're going through, or that they know that they can go in there and other people can give them solutions to their problems. How do I get my toddler through teething? How do I get my toddler to eat broccoli? What's a great recipe that I can put in a lunchbox that they won't throw in the bin? What do I do about sleep problems? That's the sticky factor for the Huggies website. Another really successful one in the UK is the Change for Life Obesity Chronic Disease campaign, where over 500,000 people have come together on this website to talk about weight loss, weight management, and what they have in common and how to integrate physical activity into their lifestyles. Very, very sticky, very successful website. And the Swap It campaign, Measure Up, in Australia is having some similar success on a smaller scale because of our population. But again, it's always think about online communities. It's not your brand, it's not your product, is why would people, what are they going to bond around online? Do you have a policy for managing content and planning content? Go into online communities thinking up front about putting some protocols, some rules around what are we allowed to put on and what are we not going to put on. And similarly, how do you control the discussion? Do you need to control the discussion? Will you be asked to control the discussion from people above you, the powers that be? Are you going to let that discussion flow without interference? Are you in a position to interfere with the content? If people online criticise your department, your product, your minister, are you going to be asked to take it off or not? Are you going to be able to let it flow? Do you have a bargaining chip, I guess, or a memo of understanding with the minister's office that if the content flows this way, our position will be to do this, and if it goes this way, our position will be to do that. And get all that sign off before you go there, because you cannot control 100% what is going to come out of online chats. So know what you can and can't respond to. And then finally, what's your exit strategies? Online communities have a life. They don't last indefinitely. Either people fatigue and just come off because they're not getting enough. There's not enough incentive to stay there. The content wasn't engaging and sticky enough, or the incentives dried up, the deals dried up. Be ahead of the game. Have a planned exit strategy for your community. So when you create it, how long are we going to keep this community going? And what's our incentivised program for keeping this community engaged, enthusiastic and connected? And let's just do, how long are you going to do it for, and then how are you actually going to say goodbye to your community in a way that doesn't offend them or turn them off or push them into jumping onto another online chat community where they're actually going to bag you out. So it's really important to think about those things going in. The last thing I wanted to talk about was mobile. The social media revolution is now firmly led by mobile. Mobile is driving the future of online interaction in quite a scary way. It's really quite hard to keep up with it. I just wanted to add some pointers about where I think the opportunities for mobile applications are in terms of behaviour change, social behaviour change, and where I think perhaps we should collectively be thinking about. We can't do everything, and departments are not going to be creating apps willy-nilly. Let's think about what is the role for mobile in health behaviour change and all sorts of behaviour change. So as a brand or as a campaign, how can you leverage mobile? Well, it can create saliency. It can create engagement and commitment, and I actually think this is where the secret lies for us, at least in the foreseeable future. It's around the power of mobile to create engagement and commitment to the particular behaviour. It can influence the information pathway, so as people move through pre-contemplation, contemplation, ready for action, or as they are forming beliefs and attitudes about a particular behaviour or a particular strategy, mobile can play a role in that, and sometimes it can be a behaviour changer at the end of the game. The examples of this are not really in the government social marketing space. The classic example of this overnight behaviour change has been the Commonwealth Bank CBA House Property Market app. I don't know if anyone's seen it, where you can now walk down a street with your smartphone, use the GPS in your phone, stand outside someone's house and be immediately connected to RPA data where you know how much that house sold for, when, what the previous buyers paid for that house. You can get very, very powerful information just through, the innovation of having a phone with a GPS and a camera all in the one unit, is revolutionising how people behave and act, and it can revolutionise how we connect with people online. It's quite outstanding. Web versus apps, just a couple of comments about that. There's no battle between mobile web and mobile apps. I wanted to be really clear about that. They're used for quite different reasons. Apps relate to music, games, videos, plus we can engage them in a behaviour change process, and I'll talk about a little bit about that in a moment. Websites are more for searching, for social networks, social connection, news and weather. And it's possible, in particular, I was giving a lot of thought this more to the health apps, that health apps can play a role in strengthening individual motivation and commitment to behaviour change. So did you know there are over 100,000 health apps actually now in app world on the internet? Not regulated. This is not a regulated industry, so you have to be really, really careful about the health apps that people are using, because some of them are quite quirky and harmful. Some of them are really, really good. But apps, for example, that allow someone through their phone to take their own blood pressure is quite a powerful tool in keeping someone engaged with their own health. Apps that allow you to go into a supermarket with your camera, scan a box of biscuits, and that will immediately click you into the Celiac Society's list of approved foods, and tells you whether that food is actually on, whether for a person living with celiac disease, whether they can actually buy that product or not. Those sorts of, the Weight Watchers app that it would allow you to log your points, if you're on Weight Watchers, allowing you to log your points on your phone as you go, keeps someone in the behaviour change contemplation phase, keeps them engaged and committed to behaviour change. For years we've talked about, successful social marketing campaigns, the Quick campaign, the iconic successful campaign in Australia. The whole premise for it rests on getting quitting on someone's individual daily agenda. And quitting, for a smoker, quitting has to be on your daily agenda every day of your life. And it has to move up the agenda. When it slides down the daily agenda, we lapse. We relapse. When it's at the top of the agenda, people are engaged, they're more attentive to behaviour change, and it's sustained in a voluntary way. So, some of these apps can actually keep the behaviour contemplation on the daily agenda and are quite successful in that way. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for keeping people engaged in real time to the behaviour change that we want to achieve. This is just an example. I've just thrown this in towards the end now. We are coming to the end of example of where you really want to be careful across your marketing departments of integrating what you're doing on mainstream media, your TV campaigns or your radio campaigns, with your online strategies, and keeping it developing it in a coordinated way. RACWA, an affiliated company of NMRA in the New South Wales, launched a campaign a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if you remember. It was, it had the tag Unworry, and it had a whole lot of little TVCs that promoted ways, used children. It was really cute, had massive cut through. One of the most successful campaigns in terms of cut through, people recalling the ad, not necessarily recalling the brand, but recalling the ad. What happened was that people remembered Unworry more than they remembered RAC or NMRA in Sydney. So when they went onto the internet to Google Unworry, a very clever competitor of the RAC had bought the keyword Unworry, and you were taken to the competitor website. So it's just a classic example of how we're not thinking about seaming up online and offline, and actually making sure that, understanding that people are travelling across these mediums all the time, and you have to put marketing budget into buying keywords on Google or the other search platforms. You've got to be at top of list if you want to actually seam your campaign together, and it's really important. Apps also can play a role in engaging the community in community mindful behaviour. For example, 73% of Australians said that they were interested in reporting issues on their community streets via an app, such as graffiti. Great way. Someone's walking past a public property, they see it's being graffiti, they can report it online, and the council can be alerted. Just a couple of other examples, and then I'm just drawing to a close. I mean, the other most successful example I've seen happening with Facebook is in Israel. They've actually applied the use of Facebook and online to organ donation and blood donation. So what they've actually done is the relevant agency in Israel has created a Facebook page that you can join where you log your particular blood group. And then when the health organisations need to call for blood donations, they actually then approach all of the logged Facebook users for that blood group, and you get a personal invitation to actually donating blood of your blood type. What are the main reasons why people don't donate blood? Either they can't remember their blood group, so when they're actually hear through the news media a call for blood donations, they can't remember what it is, or it's not real enough. There's no personal recognition that I need to do this. So the personal ability to personally invite through Facebook is a really powerful way of actually engaging people that way. So just to wrap up, I guess the 4 key learnings or lessons, if you like. The first one is that really invest time, usually through research, but also through planning and deliberative discussions internally to understand your audience. Use a digital lens to view the market, understand who, what, why and where. For example, if you're doing qualitative research, we can recruit groups around those. You say, well, we only want to talk to functionals and influencers, or we actually want to talk to the 4 dominant groups in Australia. So use it as a segmentation approach before you begin. Don't succumb to peer pressure. Don't do something because it's popular. Do it because it's right for your audience and it's right for your behaviour. Don't necessarily reinvent the wheel. Don't just take something and plonk it here for the sake of it, but do look to markets where we know there are similar behaviours and similar motivations that might save you time and effort. And finally, think through how your audience uses the different media touch points online and offline and pull that together online into a seamless approach. So I think that's all that I've got to say. I hope that there's some learnings there. Everyone can take away something that's useful. Thank you very much for your time.